We're talking quarterbacks. It is the month of February and the off season continues to move along. So let's have a little debate. Rocco Becht versus Brock Purdy. I don't know if anybody's discussed it before, so let's be the first ones. This is the Iowa State fan perspective.
Snaps good, holds good, kick on the way by Conrady, end over end, and it is good! Kyle Conrady hit a 54-yard field goal, and Iowa State leads at 20-19! Oh my goodness!
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the off season. This is the Iowa State fan perspective. As always, my name is Jake. I am joined by my co-host, Justin, each and every single week. The month of February gets a little dry. The Iowa State basketball team is heating up for a March Madness that could be a magical run, but we have to fill a little bit of time. We talk college football here all the time. Like and subscribe to the video. If you guys love all things college football, we got you covered here at Play the Fight Song every single week with our live weekly episodes. And make sure to use the code PTFS at shopnorivals.com for the best hats in all of collegiate sports. We got you covered, free shipping there. Justin, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. We'll keep this one a little shorter, but I think because Rocco Becht has still at least one more full season to play as an Iowa State Cyclone, thankfully, we might be the first one to have this debate. Who is as the kids say, who is the GOAT? Is it Brock Purdy or is it Rocco Becht? Are you ready to discuss tonight? How are we doing tonight?
Really trying to date yourself there with the,
I know,
as the kids would say, reference, but no, this is a topic that I know me and you have been looking forward to discuss on here for a while, and it's really not something that we've discussed much in person, so it should be good. A lot of new opinions from us here. I know it can be kind of tough to discuss something like this, especially since Rocco's only played 2 years and Brock's obviously the most accomplished quarterback our school has seen by far, and we're so closely removed from him. But looking back at their stats through the first 2 years, it's a legit debate, and I think it's exciting to get into and just something fun to talk about during the offseason, like you said, especially when Brock's just about to get paid his first big NFL contract coming up.
Brock's about to get his big contract. Just saw him getting talked about on ESPN with that exact same topic. And then Rocco coming off an 11-win season, the most in Iowa State history. Seems like everything's kind of in front of him. He still has a lot to play for. We're going to talk hypotheticals. We're going to talk real stats, what backs it up, and really what could decide this debate. And at the end of this, we're not just going to leave it up to those two because we pay homage to Iowa State's historical program. Justin and I are going to do a little snake draft. I think we did this a couple of episodes ago. We're going to pick three of our four favorite quarterbacks, and you guys could hear some names that maybe you haven't heard in quite some time. But we gotta pay homage to some greats. Justin, doing the research on this, I was like looking up historical stats and stuff, and I just saw some names that just kind of brought a smile to my face.
Yeah, doing the research was definitely insightful for, I know, guys like us who are obviously.
Can I ask you, Justin, did you learn a little bit? Did you learn a little more than maybe you didn't already know? I did. I know you're kind of new to this.
I'm new to this. I mean, beyond Sage Rosenfeld's, I can't say I could name an Iowa State quarterback before him. So everything beyond the late 90s was all new for me, for sure. But it was really good to go back and catch up on some of my guys like Brett Meyer and Austin Arnaud, because some of the guys that like we grew up with. So it's good. It's fun to go back and judge how we were then, how we are now.
I would doubt that we have any like pre-late 1990s Iowa State football fans that really listen to us on a weekly basis. So if we kind of keep this a little bit modern, I'm sure the fans won't mind, but we might throw a few names out there that you've never heard or maybe you have heard before and you're just a
And
sicko and you know your history.
And let's be honest, the history of Iowa State football is not great.
That's
The list is
thank
not
you.
super
So
deep.
you brought the elephant up in the room. That's kind of why we're doing this, because it's kind of funny that outside of Hunter Deckers, these are our two greatest quarterbacks of all time. Just so happen to be the last two quarterbacks that we've had take under center for Iowa State, which is something to celebrate, and it's why it's fun to do this.
And the fact that they're back to back is just or not back to back. Obviously, Hunter Deckers was there in the middle, but I was looking through the history of some of the quarterbacks. We never had more than 3 straight seasons of a 2,000-yard passer, and now we've had 7 in a row, dating back to Purdy with Deckers, and then the 2 years of Rocco. So I know obviously a lot of that is just how the game is played, but I mean you'd still expect to see that in the at least throughout the 2000s. So program's obviously in a much better space today than it ever has been.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. Let's get into it a little bit. We'll kind of break down the stats from either side, but Justin, I want to start with you. Obviously, it's not set in stone yet. I think that would be my argument. If you asked any guy in the parking lot of Jack Trice Stadium who is the GOAT between these two right now, I think the argument would be made for Brock Purdy. But is there an argument to be made if Rocco Becht's career ended tomorrow? Could he still be considered the best of all time, or does his story still need to be written before we close the book on his chapter?
Yeah, there's absolutely much more that he still needs to accomplish if we're going to say he's had a better career than Brock. And maybe it'd be better for something to you to start with, because I know how high you hold Rocco right now in regards and maybe some of the gripes that you had with Brock. But I obviously went to school at the same time when Brock was there.
Sure.
So went to a lot of the games, was really involved in that. So he's kind of got a special place in my heart for me. And just being like the first one to really kind of put Campbell's teams on the map and legitimize Iowa State football as a whole. But if you look, like I touched on at the beginning, if you look at some of their stats to start their careers, they're honestly really similar in the track that Rocco's on right now. If he keeps this up, he's honestly, as surprising as it sounds, he's going to pass Rocco in almost all of his stats, in his wins and his accolades.
Rocco's going to pass Brock, you mean?
Yeah, did I mix that up?
I think you said Brock, but that's okay.
Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Let's do that first, because I'm glad you brought that up. Let's throw Brock's freshman year out of the way for this conversation. Let's go first 2 full seasons of under their belt starting, which for Brock Purdy would have been in 2019 and 2020. And for Rocco, obviously the last 2 seasons in 23 and 24. Let's start with Brock. Brock in 2019 was a 66 completion percentage, 27-9 touchdown to interception ratio. He threw for 3,900 yards. He was 18 yards shy from 4,000 passing yards, which is pretty incredible. And they went 7-6 that season. Trying not to date myself, it seems like too long ago. I believe that was the season they lost to Notre Dame in the bowl game. His freshman year was the year they went to the Alamo Bowl. So that was the year they went 7-6 and lost to Notre Dame. 2020 comes around, still can be debated as Iowa State's most historical season in its program history. Obviously, some weird things because they played 12 games, but that was including a bowl game and a conference championship game. Brock was 67% completion percentage, 19-9 touchdown to interception ratio, and 2,700 yards. So his stats took honestly a huge dip. He under 1,000 passing yards, and in one less game. I understand that, but it's just kind of crazy to look back and see that. And in that year, they were 9-3 and they won the Fiesta Bowl. So what was the big difference in that year? Obviously, Breece Hall really emerged as one of the best running backs in all of college football. The tight ends were used a little bit more. And Iowa State, I believe, kind of didn't have a huge, like Xavier Hutchinson, it was his first year kind of coming to his own. They didn't really have a stud receiver. Let's go to Rocco. In 2023, his first season, I believe, as a redshirt freshman, 62% completion percentage. So Brock has the edge in completion percentage. 23-8 touchdown to interception ratio. He threw for 3,120 yards, and they went 7-6. Obviously, everybody remembers that. Getting to a bowl game after a disappointing 2022 season, losing in the Liberty Bowl. And then this season, Rocco Completion percentage dipped just a tad at 59%, but he threw almost 100 more passes this season, 3,500 yards, 25-9 touchdown to interception ratio. And obviously, everybody knows 11-3, huge success, won the Pop-Tarts Bowl, all that good stuff. So the difference between what I see right now between Rocco's early career and Brock's is the progression. Like he goes from 3,100 yards to 3,500 yards. And I thought Brock, from that span from 2019 to 2020, he still became a better player, but I think it was clearly obvious in the progression that Rocco made from last year to this year. Like I thought he was night and day a much better quarterback.
If you're arguing like their first year played to their second year though, and not just looking at like their second year to their third year, that jump that Brock made from his first year in 2018 to 2019 was pretty substantial. After that 2019 season, I just remember a lot of people were even talking about him being a potential day two, potentially day one draft pick after the next year.
I remember seeing day one stuff. I did. And I thought that was after his freshman year, 2018 is when I remember seeing that.
And then he followed it up with that sophomore year performance and had those stats as when people were talking about it going into that third year, kind of the same space where Rocco's going into draft eligibility this upcoming season. And for me, that's one of the biggest differentiators between the two, which if you look at it like stats wise, win wise, and everything, they're very comparable. But I don't really, what surprises me is how much higher I felt like people talked about Brock at the time. And maybe it's just because Rocco's coming after Brock, so we're not as surprised by it. But like you said, Brock was talked about in a way where people thought, obviously that changed from when he actually did enter the draft and was the last pick of the draft. There was a time where like people thought he could have been a really high draft pick. And I ended up looking it up. He ended up finishing 7th in the Heisman for whatever that means in 2019. Yeah. He ended up getting a vote.
7th? Did he really? Okay.
He received a vote. So it was Joe Burrow, pretty good list here. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Justin Fields, Jonathan Taylor, Justin Herbert, and then Brock Purdy were the 7 guys who received a vote. Someone gave Brock a vote.
Good NFL players, by the way. Just kind of ironic. Usually it doesn't always work like that.
Yeah, and just with like how tapped in I am to some of the betting markets now, this is something I was saying last year. You couldn't even find Rocco on the Heisman betting odds last year, and Correct. I thought for sure you'd be able to see him this year. You can't even get him for odds.
Which I was going to say, I was just
obviously doesn't talk to how good the two players are. I just think it's weird, kind of how the two players are viewed on a national sense, I guess, because I feel like with Iowa State, we're kind of pretty dialed into it. We know how good Rocco is, but the national media is not near caught up on what Rocco's been doing at Iowa State the last 2 years.
Say Rocco has, let's just say we'll get in. We'll do another episode on like expectations for the season going into 2025. But say they just go 8-4. They win some good game. They beat Arizona State, but maybe they fall at Colorado. They lose to Kansas State, and they miss the Big 12 title game this year. Does that resume itself right there, 8-4, I'm assuming his passing stats are somewhat similar. Is that good enough to be better than Brock Purdy? Or does Brock's NFL success influence this debate? Like, or is it hard to wipe away like the GOAT talk right now because Brock's NFL career has been just leaps and bounds bigger than what we ever envisioned? I think people can honestly say.
I feel like it really is a complicated thing kind of looking at Brock's past because his NFL success has really kind of painted away the way he was viewed or the way Iowa State fans felt his senior year, and not about him specifically, but just about how that team and how they underachieved. I mean, we talked about Brock's sophomore year was his best season, statistically, at least by far as a college quarterback. To see him kind of not even regress, because I still feel like he got better decision-making wise his last 2 years, just to kind of see that, it felt really weird at the end of his career when we were thinking he was going to be this guy who was going to be a first round or second round pick, to see him end up barely getting drafted, which at the time felt pretty warranted. Where Rocco, I just feel like the trust level with him on the field is a lot higher than it was with Brock, which is a little
I agree.
weird because Brock was great at making plays and extending plays and being electric to watch. But if I don't it's hard for me to put into words kind of the feeling that Brock gave you when he was on the field because there was a lot of excitement in there, but there was a little bit of fear.
Oh
There was
yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of
It
worry.
needs to be
A lot
mentioned. It's okay.
a lot of times I was saying he was almost always the best player on the field, for the offense and sometimes for the defense.
I said
Um, and it's
I,
just not really something that we've had to deal with Rocco. Although the interception numbers have been higher, they haven't been as, like, big of, like, head-scratching plays, I feel like.
yeah. Um I am very glad you said that because I I said some things when Brock ended his career that publicly I'm glad we didn't have a podcast at the time because I think I'd regret it looking back on it. But you said it, Justin. It's like the trust factor. These two are really similar in like super lovable guys, awesome leaders, make plays when they matter. But the one thing I think they completely differentiate each other, at least from their college perspectives. Brock Purdy in the NFL has shown this ability to make comebacks, but it's the ability to come back and win football games and lead the team. I think some of the stuff that Rocco did this year, like UCF game, the Iowa drive, just those type of things, like Brock wasn't all that great at in his college career. Brock's stats when they had a lead going in the fourth quarter, unbeatable. It's why they call him the game manager in the NFL. I think he deserves more because I think he is better than that. Look at the Lions game 2 years ago in the NFC title. But in college at Iowa State, you were never coming back if Iowa State had a lead on you. Like Brock was just so good at not making mistakes. But when you got behind, the Clemson game, the Iowa game, the list goes on and on, the Oklahoma game, always just kind of ended it with some turnovers. And who knows? Can Rocco replicate what he did last year? Honestly, probably not because he played damn near perfect to make those comebacks happen. But what he did this year was so special. And the plays he made and the game winning drives that he put together, it just, for me, it just puts him above Brock because I think Brock had more talent around him. And we'll see. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel were fantastic. And this is the most guys you've ever sent to the combine in Iowa State history. So maybe that sounds stupid to say, but I feel like still comparing the 2020 team to even last year, I still feel like that 2020 team had, I mean, Brees Hall, Will McDonald, like there was still plenty of NFL guys up and down that roster. And I think Rocco solely won football games on his back.
Which I'm glad you brought up Higgins and Knoll, because that kind of does give me some reservation about Rocco going into next year. If I were to ask you who has the higher ceiling as a quarterback or had the higher ceiling as a quarterback, I would assume you would say Rocco, or how would you answer that?
Just as a college quarterback, not even in the
Yeah.
NFL, or what do you refer? Yeah,
Yeah. Who's got the higher ceiling?
I think it's Rocco right now. That's what makes 2025 super fascinating is because there were times we admitted it. He got tunnel vision with Jalen and Jaden, but maybe that's something he can like improve on, and he just gets a fresh page. Like they're bringing in some new receivers we're super excited about, and you're getting Daniel Jackson back and some other names. So maybe he will just rely on his own skill, and it's another year under his belt. I think it's him because Rocco, he's better on his feet than Brock. Brock was a decent improviser, but towards like once they crossed that UCF game, there were things that we saw and plays we saw Rocco make with his feet. I never thought he was able to do, and it just kind of tapped into another arsenal in his game that I was like really impressed with. And I also think Rocco has a better arm. I think he's got a much like there were times, not to bring it up again, but you remember the Iowa game in 2021, and I think it was Hutchinson who beat the safety on a post route or something, and Rocco or Brock, sorry, just blatantly underthrew him. And there was multiple times Brock struggled to get the ball there. I think Rocco can step up and hit anybody downfield in stride. I mean, he's proved that with Higgins time and time again. That's what another thing I think Rocco has over Brock, just looking at sheer skill perspective.
And I know that Rocco obviously made a lot of good plays with his feet, and we worried about Brock's arm from time to time. I think a lot of that had to do with him extending plays and it really being some deep, challenging throws that not a lot of guys can make. Were some
Yep.
of the plays that he was trying to make. But I don't know what it is, but I have some real reservations about Rocco coming into this season next year without Higgins and Knoll. I know we talked about how talented of a team Brock had around him as well. But I hold Knoll and Higgins in such a high regard. I don't think we've ever had a wide receiver tandem play at a level that they had at the
Yeah.
same time on the same team. And like you said, a lot
Ooh.
of
Lazard and Butler were up there, but I get what you're saying. It was tough to beat.
yes,
But you're
but
probably still right.
that was not Brock's team at the time when those two were playing
Correct.
together like that. And like we said, a lot of the mistakes that Rocco had were some of those tunnel vision mistakes. And I don't want to like speak bad about any like past Iowa State coaches or anything like that, but obviously people had problems with Tom Manning at the time. I think
Yep.
the offense that Rocco's rocking with right now is in such a better spot than it was when Brock was there. And I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that Brock struggled with was he pressed a lot, especially when they were down. And he made a lot of really good plays, but a lot of times those deficits were too big to overcome and he would press too hard and make some of those mistakes. That's why you see him in the NFL now succeed as much as he has when he's got a Kyle Shanahan and a great system around him. Because going back to what I asked you before, I do think that at least at this current moment, I think Brock's got the higher ceiling because when he's got those pieces around him, we've seen him just ball out. And it's when he was pressing and trying too hard is where he's making those mistakes. I worry that Rocco, if he doesn't have the same system around him this year, that we may not see him progress as much as we did going into next year.
Yep.
Which only time will tell, but it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see the same progression next year as we did with Rocco this year.
I think that's a great point, because that's also something you would write in the book about Matt Campbell's tenure at Iowa State is how he was able to move on from one of his best friends in Tom Manning. And I thought he's made huge strides in his offensive coaching throughout his career. And that's really been the biggest difference from like when people thought he was going to flop in 2022 and his career at Iowa State was going to dwindle down. And now he just seems to progress up and up is him having the ability to trust young coaches. And I think Rocco has that advantage. You're absolutely correct. Who could have like who would know what Brock could have done with Nate Shieldhouse calling plays? I'm definitely with you there.
Exactly. And another point that I didn't really touch on with Rocco's legs, obviously those were great plays and we needed them. And that's great leadership, great poise as him as a quarterback. But I feel like a lot of his clutch plays, not to take anything away from him, how many of those were plays that he was making with his arm or plays that he was improvising with his arm, where I feel like Brock, a lot of those times he wasn't scrambling or making plays with his feet. He was improvising and making some big time throws, which I don't have a whole lot of like plays that I remember that were just big time throws from Rocco as much as they were big time plays from the team around him as well. And maybe that's just something that's just my opinion of it, but it is just kind of a different way of I see the two quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's well said. And we'll kind of close this conversation out and just listing a few more stats. I think one thing Rocco has above Brock is the Iowa game. He has one win on Iowa that Brock never got. And to his credit, like Brock's had opportunities and Rocco put the game-winning drive together. Rocco is 18-9 as a starter. Brock was 30-17 as a starter. Both were Big 12 Freshman of the Year, and then honorable All Big 12 the following season. Kind of ironic how that worked out. We'll see. We'll see what Rocco can do in year 3. But for me, I think he's just an 8-4 season for me, solidifying that he wins the debate. But I definitely see like what Brock Purdy has done for Iowa State's football program in general just will never be thanked enough. I would say, for lack of a better term, what he's done in changing the program around for Matt Campbell. I know he can attest to that, and just Iowa State fans and how we treat this program now as a legitimate Big 12 contender, usually year after year, so to say. So,
and to put a ball on this argument, the only like reservation that I had with Rocco, like I don't want to seem like I'm being any negative with him at all. I felt like you said, he had a really like not a perfect year, but a lot of those like close one score games, he was really good at the end. And I want to see him continue that next year.
it's going to
Not
be
even
very
to that,
hard.
not even to the perfect degree. Obviously, there should be some regression there, but I just want to see how he's going to progress next year in a different circumstance like that with a little different weapons before I can go ahead and just say like he's automatically the best quarterback in Iowa State history.
We'll see if he's and who knows? I mean, he like I said, he can definitely be around for 2 more years. I don't know where his NFL draft stock sits right now, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, Justin, before we close this episode out, make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, comment down below what your thoughts are on the debate. I have a feeling it's going to be heavy Brock Purdy, and I might just be a hater, but I like to go against the grain. All right, let's do our quarterback draft, Justin. I think this one's kind of fun. How we do this, we'll pick 3 or 4. We'll see if the list kind of runs out on us. Basically, one of us will start first, and we'll go from there, and we'll build our quarterback room of Iowa State. Do we get anybody post or pre-1999? We'll have to wait and see. Justin, I'll do you the honors. You can get first pick. We could say, let's just say Brock and Rocco are in this draft. Let's go ahead and say that. So you go ahead. Who is your first one you're taking off the board?
We're putting both of those guys in the draft.
Yeah, you can take them. That's
okay. Okay, I think that makes it more entertaining because I know there's a certain quarterback that has a place in your heart that I want you to talk about more than myself. So if I get to draft like that, I'll start out and I'll draft Brock Purdy. Obviously, been talking about him all podcast here. Got the most accolades, most accomplished, most won,
most starts, most yards. Yeah,
pretty much any record you've got out there, he currently holds it, and he's out there doing it in the NFL right now too. So giving us a good name. So can't go wrong with picking Brock at 1.
I'd love to pick my boy Rocco, but I can't let you steal my other pick. And we've been talking GOAT debate all night, Justin. We haven't even mentioned the real one, and that is number 15 in Cardinal and Gold, and it's Seneca Wallace. Justin said it. I mean, anybody knows me close, this will always be my GOAT. I think what Seneca did, it's kind of like Rocco to Brock. What Sage did before Seneca couldn't have been done without him. Like Rocco couldn't do what he's doing right now without Brock. Sage Rosenfels leads the way. Iowa State's first 9-win season. In comes this JUCO kid from Sacramento. I think, was it Oregon State offered to play receiver, and he never had any other options. He plays for Dan McCarney, and he just puts Iowa State on the map. And we thought Iowa State didn't have, like, there's not a lot of historical cool stories for the Iowa State football program. It was very bleak before Seneca Wallace came to campus. He got Iowa State in the top 10 in 2001 for, I believe that was the first time in program history. They should have been, I think it was 6-0 or 7-0 had he not been out at the inch line against Florida State and Bobby Bowden. Still one of the coolest things. I've rewatched the game 9 times on YouTube. The comeback in Iowa City against an Iowa team who went all the way to the Rose Bowl, and that was their only regular season loss. The wheels came off the wagon that year, and they lost in the it's now the Idaho Potato Bowl. I don't know what it was at the time. They lost to Boise in Boise. Just I don't know how they get that matchup. And they lost to UConn in November. It was kind of weird. Got just trounced by Oklahoma and Texas. But like the first 7 weeks of that 2001 season, I could only imagine like experiencing that in real time, not being 3 years old. Just because what he put Iowa State on the map, like he was on the Heisman ballots. He was like a lot of people's Heisman dark horse, ton of recognition. And then in 2000, the year before, beats Iowa in the 9-11 game in November, had a chance to beat Alabama in the Independence Bowl. The list kind of goes on and on. Back-to-back 7-win seasons kind of seems laughable for my quote-unquote GOAT, but that was very, like that was, you could have told an Iowa State fan back then that was basically 10, 11 wins to them. So Seneca is, he's my first pick. Will always be my first pick.
Well said, sir. I don't think I could have quite matched that one. So I wanted you to shine a light on Seneca and give him the props that he deserves in this whole conversation as well. We gonna do a snake draft here, so you gonna go with
Yeah.
a second pick?
Oh, okay, so it's back to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I will go Rocco. I thought I was going to go back to you. I'll go Rocco. Like Rocco is for being someone who's like we're now getting that age, Justin, where the players are like 3 or 4 years younger than we are, so it feels kind of weird. But Rocco is crawling up there as one of my favorite Cyclones of all time. He's getting close to like top 5 Cyclones of all time, and if you know me well, that doesn't go lightly. We'll kind of see what goes on, but Rocco's been fantastic, and yeah, he's second for me.
All right. Well, for my second pick, I'm gonna go ahead and go with Brett Meyer.
Yep, good call.
Atlantic High School, Iowa product. One of the first
Hawkeye 10
quarterbacks.
product.
Hawkeye 10 product. One of the first quarterbacks that I really remember growing up.
Mhm.
Played with him on the video games, the old NCAA, like NCAA 06 and NCAA 07. Not a great record, finished with a 21-27 record at Iowa State. But if you look back at some of these other records with some of our other quarterbacks, it's really not that bad. Went 1-1 in bowl games, finished with 3 seasons, almost 4 seasons of over 2,000 passing yards, and is one of the only 4-year starters at Iowa State.
Yes.
If that's something I saw correctly, I don't know
No,
if he was the first 4-year starter.
exactly right. Yeah, he was, and he's tied with Brock for the most starts. 48 starts, I believe, for both of them.
There you go. And then, yeah, obviously the connection that he and Todd Blythe had
Yep.
brought Iowa State some light there in the mid 2000s under Coach Mack, and just brought some excitement for Iowa State. So,
yeah, Brett's a great pick. Like I'm glad you mentioned the starts thing because post Brett and pre Brett were both. It was a diamond a dozen for Iowa State. To Iowa State to get a quarterback to start all 4 years was literally unheard of. And now we're asking, guys like Alex Mansky and JJ Cole, as soon as they step on campus, they're going to be the next Brock Purdy or something like that. Like our expectations have raised for good reason. Like we're privileged to say that, but for a guy like Brett Meyer from Atlantic, which is cool too, an in-state kid to start all 4 years, was really, really awesome. And yeah, had a great freshman year, had a chance to, I think, win the North that year. They would have gotten beat by Colorado not Colorado. They would have been beat by the Vince Young Texas team by literally 60 points. Look up what happened in that Big 12 title game between Colorado and Texas that year. But Iowa State was a Kansas game away from being in that conversation. Sorry, go ahead.
Young Justin was shocked to find out that Brett Meyer didn't make it in the NFL just by looking at the current state of Iowa State football at the time. What he was able to do when he was there.
Todd Blythe, how Todd didn't make it. He's also a top 5 for me. God, he was awesome. I'm kind of torn. I'll go.
I got one more pick. I got back to back here.
I forget we go back to back. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. For my third pick, I'm gonna go with Steel Jans. Just kidding. I'm gonna go with Austin Arnaud, quarterback to follow up Todd Blythe, or follow up Brett Meyer. Yeah, getting my people confused now. Maybe not one of the most statistically high Iowa State quarterbacks in history, or maybe not one of like the flat out best if you were to do a draft, but one that brought stability to the program in the mid 2000s, like we said, not something that Iowa State could say for a while, a 3-year starter. And he got the Insight Bowl for Paul Rhodes, that first Insight Bowl win. He was the starter on that team. And I don't know how many years was it before and after, or how many years after that was Iowa State's next bowl win?
So before was the Independence Bowl with Brett Myers. Yeah.
Yes.
And then, so there was a 5 or 6 year gap. And that was the Minnesota Insight Bowl was one of the first, like that was one of the most vivid memories in my early fan. Like that was one of the first
for sure.
things I remember. And
growing up,
the Insight Bowl was the coolest thing ever.
Growing up with me and you, I don't know if it's just because our Dad was such a big Iowa State fan, but they made that Insight Bowl. And just being a part of a 6-6 win team, but bringing home a bowl win as an Iowa State fan, I just remember that being like the coolest thing. And that was one of like the special things about college football is that mattered. They may have only been 6-6.
Bowl games matter.
But that's what mattered. And Iowa State finished the season the right way. And it wasn't something that we had seen for a while after that. Obviously, that was like Iowa State's only bowl win under Paul Rhodes, but Austin Arnaud was still there for 4 years, had a couple seasons over 2,000 passing yards, and had some fun games at Iowa State. I don't know what was his record against Iowa. Was it?
I don't think he ever beat him. He got, because in 2009 they got spanked. 2010, I think they got spanked again. 11 was Steel Jans.
Yeah, 2006 was when they won.
In 2000 and Meyer beat him in 2007. There was a 4-year gap from 08 to I think 2008, 9, 10. Yeah. So Arnaud never did beat him, but
that's true.
After that Insight Bowl, like, am I wrong in saying Iowa State's next bowl win was with Kyle Kempt in the Liberty Bowl? So how many years would that? How many years would that have been? That'd have been another.
That's what
8.
I was wondering, because we made the Liberty Bowl with Sam Richardson. But they lost that.
Yep. So
yeah,
it was a gap. It was a gap between that Inside.com bowl. So Austin Arnaud, again, another 4-year starter or 3-year starter, basically. I remember him getting the nod against Kansas State. Meyer got hurt his senior year. They're wearing those ugly gold pants with the spinning chicken that Chizik brought out, and I think they ended up winning that game. We went there. So Arnaud's a great one. Good pull. My last one. I mean, I got to do it. We're going Sage Rosenfeld's. I'll see. I think, Sage is up next year. Yeah, Sage, I feel bad that he's the last pick. He probably should be.
Showing our age a little bit there.
It is, but he was just so good. I mean, he honestly, like, outside of Brock, Brock could have a career-ending injury tomorrow. Right now, Sage has probably the best NFL career out of all of these guys. He was in the league for I want to say 8 or 9 years. I'd have to look that up. It led Iowa State to its first 9-win season. Was a super big deal. That 2000 season, they got beat bad a couple of times, but like helped turn around and start a Dan McCarney era that was just much needed for a football program. And Matt Campbell pays homage to Coach Mack, and like it couldn't have been done without him, he says. And just like Sage was that first guy that helped Coach Mack really turn that around. I believe behind him is Darren Davis, brother of Troy, if I got that right. Maybe I'm too young to say that. But that is my last pick. So, Justin, my 3 were Rocco, Sage, and Seneca. Yours were Brett, Arnaud, and Brock. Not bad. All right, let's go one more. You can make this. It doesn't have to be statistical. It could be fun. Like, who do you want as your honorable mention for your last pick?
I know I teased Steel Jans before.
You did.
He's pretty good. Brought us some memorable Iowa games, but he was part of that like 8-year run where we couldn't get a quarterback to stick. I'll go ahead and say another one I want to shout out is Jared Barnett.
There you
got
go.
his stats pulled up here. He played from 11 to 12, the same time as Steel Jans. I still can't believe one of the two of those guys didn't stick. But Barnett, obviously best known for his win in the Oklahoma State upset. I mean, man, after I was looking back at his stats, he
transferred to Illinois State. That's all I remember. Transferred to Illinois State.
Played 9 games and 7 games. In his best season, 2011, he had 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 6 picks.
Yep.
But he was a starter for that Iowa State game against Oklahoma State, which probably the biggest win in program history. And I thought he was going to be the next big thing, but didn't quite work out that way.
Well, speaking of my honorable mention, speaking of not making it, Sam Richardson. Like,
I had him too.
34 starts, over 6,000 yards, 45 to 25 touchdown interception ratio. This guy deserved so much better than what he could have been. You can find on the message boards too. Like, the fans all agree Sam Richardson deserved much better. I think he was the quarterback during that Mangino just nightmare. I think Herman might have been one of his other coordinators. The defense under Rhodes those last few years was, sorry, Wally Burnham, just horrendous stuff. And yeah, Richardson deserved better. He could easily win 6 games with a Matt Campbell coach team.
I got his stats pulled up here. He threw for 6,000 yards in essentially 3 seasons. Well, I guess in 4 seasons, threw for 6,000 yards, had 45 touchdowns and 25 picks, and he was a whopping 8-28 as a starter.
Dude, I just remember him getting. Maybe I have this wrong, but I remember him just getting benched and starting, bench and like they would just keep throwing him throughout the depth chart and just kept blaming it on him. And I don't know.
We're gonna blame it on themselves.
Yeah, I just don't. I thought he got the short end of the stick there for how good he could have been. He should have been. Yeah. Sam Richardson, great poll. Other names: Kyle Kemp, Steele Jans, Joel Lanning. I gotta give a shout out to David Archer, 82-83. Played 6 years in the NFL. He was kind of more of a backup, but I had to give a shout out there. Marvin Seiler, he wasn't even much of a starter, but he was a quarterback on that team that beat Nebraska, and I think 93, I want to say it was, when Nebraska was top 5, and it was basically like beating modern day Alabama, beat them in Ames. The last thing I wanted to pull out, Justin, actually 2 things. Fun fact. So the Earl Bruce days, the only glimpse of pre-1990s success in Iowa State history. Iowa State had 3 straight 8-win seasons from 76 to 78 by Hall of Fame coach Earl Bruce. They averaged less than 100 passing yards per game and less than 200 rush yards per game in 1978. They won 8 games, scoring 17 points a game. In 1977, they passed for exactly 100 yards a game. And then in 1976, the first year they won 8 games, they had 2 quarterbacks playing for them. Who says the two quarterback system doesn't work? Coach Earl Bruce could get it done. Justin, my last question for you before we get out of here. Do you know who Iowa State's highest rated quarterback recruit in its history is?
Highest recruit?
That they've got, the highest commit in the quarterback position. It's fairly new.
At the time it was Brock, right?
Not as a straight high school recruit, no. I mean, he was a 3-star, but he I don't even think he's top 10. He might be.
Was it one of the
He's the only 4-star according to 247.
I think here. The kid who just transferred out from Ankeny, what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name right now?
That would be App State's quarterback, J.J. Cole.
Oh, yeah, J.J. Cole, duh.
From Ankeny. Yeah, J.J. was the only 4-star composite according to 247. So that was kind of interesting.
I'll tell you what, J.J. Cole made leaps from his year 1 spring game to his year 2 spring game. Don't think I wasn't paying attention. Big year at App State coming up.
If anything else is more exciting for Iowa State fans, number 2 on that list is Algona quarterback Alex Mansky, who he could have been a 4-star, but he basically is. So a lot to be excited about for quarterbacks and to be an Iowa State fan. Justin, this went 45 minutes long. That went a lot longer than I thought it was going to, and we're missing 20 minutes of what is probably a beatdown in this Iowa State Colorado basketball game. Any more closing thoughts before we get out of here? Appreciate you doing this tonight. That was fun.
No, it was fun. I look forward to doing some more stuff like this. I'm looking forward to breaking down some of our stuff with the draft prospects coming up. And like I said, Iowa State's just in such a good spot right now in the history of their program. It's fun to go back and look at where things were to where they are now. And I look forward to doing it more this offseason with you.
Yep. That's as always, it's a great time to be a Cyclone. Let us know in the comments if you guys want us to cover a topic this offseason. We're by all means open ears, and we'd love to do it. We appreciate all you Cyclone fans tuning in every single time. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. We're covering college football all year round, baby. This thing doesn't stop. And here at Play the Fight Song, we have a lot of good things going that we're super excited about. And the countdown to Ireland continues on. I usually, in my name tag here, I usually have the days. It's probably about time I start getting those days up until we're drinking Guinnesses and we're beating Kansas State, Justin. So that's all we got for tonight. We will be back in another couple of weeks during the off season. Have a great rest of your night. Appreciate you tuning in. And as always, how I send us out each and every single time, let's go Cyclone.